At least a couple of you have gone through work for a broadcaster and then done it later in life. It's kind of like, do you wish you'd have done it straight off, and what are the advantages of doing it straight off and being in their position, really?
I mean, there's a quote with, whatever you think of Ford, there's a quote always stuck me that Henry Ford said that no one ever made a, I'm paraphrasing here, but no one ever made a success of things by telling people what they were going to do. You know, you're only going to do something, I think, if you try and do it and make it yourself. And I think you do need to, if you want to have a career or, you know, a family or a mortgage, you're obviously going to have to earn a living some way. You could go Ian's route and have a more stable job and do your creative, or you can try and combine the two in some sort of way and make a success in television and try and use that experience to then do maybe what you're interested in. You know, I don't want to tell you how to live your lives. I mean, you'll do whatever you want. But I think the advantage, if you really want to make something independently, you learn by doing, you know. So the sooner you can get started and find time and space to do that, then you're only going to be better at it.
Yeah, because you're always rubbish when you start. That's what Ira Glass, does anyone know Ira Glass from American radio presenter? He says basically you start by doing loads of rubbish stuff and it stays rubbish for quite a long time actually. I don't know, I mean I worked in local radio, my first job was in local radio. Radio Lancashire, I volunteered there and I did that for about a year or two, and then I did a postgrad in journalism and ended up going to work in local radio, and I worked in local radio for about 4 years and I absolutely loved it. It was the best thing I've ever done, really, to be honest, in terms of job satisfaction, because I was out every day interviewing people all over the place. And then I was presenting local radio programmes as well, drive time and reading the news, and every kind of job you could imagine, we all did it because we were all broadcast journalists and you had to do all the jobs. And this was a great foundation of 4 or 5 years of doing that before I went on to make documentaries and then work in television. But if you can get into local radio, it's great now because you can actually make videos as well. And you can put loads of stuff on the web, and there's some great people in local radio, and it's amazing, and they really do care about the communities in which they live as well. So I love local radio, and I would imagine that, you know, that would be a great route to get into by even just volunteering at Radio Lancashire now, or wherever you can find, Bay Radio, whatever. Make stuff and get it on air and get it out there, and then you get feedback, you see, and then the stuff that you're making that's rubbish, suddenly, wow, this is really good, people really like that. You start putting more of that in. And then as you put more of that good stuff in, you start building up, and eventually you end up with something really quite good. There are loads of routes, actually, but please do not rely on an outdated industrial model that is just about to collapse, you know, and it's up to us to do stuff different so we can make the world better, so we don't have to live in this boom and bust kind of ridiculous economic situation. But anyway, obviously, I've not got strong opinions on any of this. You know.
I was told once, which I think is fairly good advice, if you are trying to deal with television, that commissioners will ask 3 questions. What, is the idea any good? How much will it cost? And can the person who's bringing it make it, i.e., have you got the kind of, you know, the experience? So if you've never made anything before, they're unlikely. But if it's completely finished and it's wonderful, you may just get, but I would think it probably...
The reason that I would take it maybe to Sheffield or Edinburgh though is that because you can do that and you know they'll pay for things to be shown there and then things often go from there. I don't know, if you've got something that's made and you don't want to change it.
But they would only take a single, if it was a single film.
I think that, like Mike says, getting a little showreel together would be great. You know, just to show that you've done all this work off your own, under your own steam. I presume what you're doing, are you a postgrad or an undergrad? Or? So you're doing a degree, you're probably working to earn money to keep going as well, and you've done this. I mean, I think to my mind, you know, if you came to me and said, if I had any money and a budget and stuff, and you said, oh, I've done this is what I'm really interested in, that's adding value, that could add value to me as a producer, as an independent, a small independent. This is another thing, and I think it's, you know, Michael will know probably a lot about this. Having an independent production company in Manchester, that there's loads of people who probably come to you wanting to work in television, but they've never actually done anything. Wow, you're ahead of the game there.
Is there certain sort of types of production companies he should be seeking out, or should he just totally blanket, you know, or how should he approach that?
I think you look at what shows or series that reflect what you like or you think this is connected to and see who's made it. and then they'll rip you off. No, they won't do.
Also sell it. You know, look at your idea and think about what's wonderful about it, and everything that you make, you have to sell to people. You have to sell it to commissioners firstly, and secondly, you have to sell it to the viewers, because they're the ones that are going to watch it. They're your customers. So I'd look at it really hard and think about what's brilliant about what you've done, and really sell it hard.
No, Simon's got a question, have you?
Yeah, it sounds a bit like we're actually complicit through paying our licence fees to prop up the system you described as dying. I don't think, are you encouraging us to stop paying our licence fees?
Yes.
Yes.
On quality issues. On quality issues, nothing else.
How do we deal with that aspect? Because that's not going away, is it?
What, the aspect of the licence fee?
Yeah.
Well, the whole system is knackered, really. You know, look at the state that the world's in globally. Think about it. There's 1 billion people who've got enough, probably, and then 6 billion people who haven't. The whole thing's going to collapse. It's built on a lie, which is the perpetual growth of an economy. So
they can't afford to keep chasing
well,
the licence.
let's be honest. So the BBC and everybody else, all the other broadcasters, are just perpetuating this myth, this model of consumption and production, consumption that's boom and bust, and you keep going into the point where we reach with no more oil, it all collapses, right? So now people are finding each other online and building communities online and actually making those work in the real offline world, face to face. If you can find a way to bypass this whole system and build a community that cares about what you do, you will totally transform your opportunities in this world, because your net worth is your network. That sounds a bit cliche, but, you know, as my granddad always used to say, he was a man of few words. He said, son. Well, that's it, he just said, son, man of few words. But he used to say that, you know, it's the people around you that make your life worth living. And when you think about it, it's those friendships that you've got at the university and outside that will stay with you for a long time. This is what makes life worth living, not working with a bunch of soulless people in a corporation that's kind of oppressing you. Look, I'm still a freelance for the BBC. If they see this, I probably won't be any longer, but it's soulless. A lot of these organisations are soulless. The licence fee just perpetuates an industrial model which is about selling you crap that you do not need, that you can't afford to pay for, right? That gets you into more and more debt. This is not life. This is fake life. We need to figure out new business models and do it with each other to build value for other people that they will then want to share their value, that there's their money, their revenues with us. That's how it works. It's the only way it's going to work.
I'm going to defend the licence fee. I think it's really important. I'm going to defend the licence fee. I think it's hugely important. I think the BBC's...
To make the big high-budget projects you described, that's absolutely fine.
You can't afford to make them without that.
No, but it's presumably paying for a load of stuff we don't want either.
I think it's very hard to know, A, what people want. I think commissioners do live slightly in fear, especially with falling ratings, because whatever the government say, they do look at the BBC's ratings when they come to discuss the licence fee, and they do use it as an argument against them. So that's, the BBC is in this sort of like torn position, which, you know, I don't work for the BBC, I obviously chose to leave it, but I do believe in it, and I do believe its value. And I think that the high-end productions aren't really made by anyone else. I think the other big argument for me with the BBC is that not just the BBC television, but the radio, the online, they're really respected around the world, much more so in some ways than in this country. You'd be amazed when you go abroad how many doors it opens to you if you say the word BBC. And I just sometimes think we should just scrap our entire foreign policy, bung loads of money into media, because look at how successful America has been at Americanising the world. And then people would sort of like, you know, understand a little bit more about Britain, because I think that is the way that most of us perceive the world, is through the media. I can give you two examples. I can give you an example from 100 years ago. I can give you an example from 5 years ago. What does the women who campaigned for the vote, what were they called? What was the movement called? They never called themselves that. The Daily Mail called them that. That's how the media influences your life. What do we call the thing that happened in Japan? The nuclear reactor got scuppered by the seawater coming in. The big wave coming in. We never used to call it that. We called it a tidal wave. It's the media that called it a tsunami. These little ways that it sort of infiltrates our life, even though we don't realise it and don't probably want it to. It's all around us. It's not purposefully doing that.
It also infiltrates our lives in massively negative ways, like social comparison, that you are basically, all independent TV is funded by this advertising consumer model that tells you you are crap unless you have this, this, this and this, and unless you go into debt to get it. This is all perpetuated by the BBC and the other independents because they're trying to get ratings to, and the way that you do this is you buy into the dominant political model, which is consumption. And it's not possible to continue. We have not got shared value. Television and media, I went into it because there were people like Tony Wilson and Bob Smithies, do you remember Bob Smithies, who were questioning these systems and doing things. Instead of the elites controlling things, they were questioning it. They were saying we can do things differently. They were, even within those structures, they were raising questions that were uncomfortable for the mainstream, and they were making it line up with ordinary people's values. The people who are working in many of these organisations are concerned about their careers, not about you or other people. They're concerned about their careers. So the BBC and other organisations perpetuate this hegemonic idea of culture, which is to make you feel inferior so that you need to buy stuff that keeps this whole model going. Now, as soon as we wake up to that, we'll realise that it's a corrupt system and it cannot continue. So we need to figure out ways that television can revitalise our societies to get community and belonging and a sense of shared ownership to come back, for us to do stuff together and to actually make a difference for each other, that we're dependent on each other, we're dependent on the natural resources of the environment and so on. Let's make programmes that actually talk about that instead of crap to do with making you want to go out and buy new shoes. Seriously, I think these things, and I hold these views very lightly.
I mean, in a strange way.
Sorry, isn't that subjective though?
Of course it is.
Yeah.
Everything's subjective. I'm trying to get a bit of debate going, so, you know.
In a strange way, if it worked well, the licence fee in the BBC should, to some extent, be insulated from the forces you're describing. I'm not saying it is, but that's, I suppose, the basic idea behind it is that it should be a space for ideas and public debate. I'm not saying that it is, but if it, I think the BBC is, in some ways, the best of a bad bunch.
Yeah, it is. Seriously, it is. Yeah.
Also, I know we're talking about inspiration. I'm just going to talk about something completely different. I was at BAFTAs recently, which was very lucky. Had a lovely time. And there was a guy that won. Another thing that we're very good at doing in this country is live outside broadcast directing. The top directors for live outside broadcast in the world are British. They go all around the world, and there's quite a few of them. There's sort of a very small clique of them, I suppose, but they're British. They're brilliant. And one of the guys that won the BAFTA Lifetime Achievement Award, even though he's only 45, which I found quite worrying, was a guy called Hamish. He comes from Blackpool. He went to a normal school. He did, I can't remember what degree he did, it wasn't in the creative arts. He started work quite young. He was just passionate about working in TV, didn't really know what he wanted to do, worked in lots of different areas, and now does these live broadcasts. He did both the Olympic ceremonies, he does the Black Eyed Peas, he does Robbie Williams. He had a showreel of people saying thank you to him that would be like anybody's dream showreel of A-list stars and bands and, you know, rock stars. And it was just wonderful listening to him speak, because he was saying that he and the girl who does the timings with him, comes from Bermondsey in East London, he said that sometimes they sit in the truck and they think, here am I from Blackpool and her from Bermondsey, and here we are sort of controlling everything that people are seeing in this stadium and that's going out to tens of millions of people in the States. He does the Super Bowl and things like that. And I just found that really inspirational, that actually in the media there isn't as much. It is much more of a meritocracy, perhaps, than things like banking and business.
It's only a meritocracy if you fit into their meritocratic system. You have, for every person like that you mentioned, I could probably find 150 people who were equally talented who've got no chance because they had views that didn't fit into the cultural milieu of the BBC or whichever broadcaster. It's a hegemony. It's basically you have to conform. It's about conformity, it's about being fitting into the system. It's not about having brilliant ideas. If you can conform and you can fit into the system and you can be one out of hundreds that are trying to get in, and you get in, you know, like I got in, it took me ages, I got in, and it took me ages to get in. Every interview they said, you were almost there. You were I went to the BBC News Trainee Scheme, the most prestigious news trainee scheme and so on. I got down to the final 10, and it was 2 days of whatever, you know, and at the end it was, you were so wonderful, absolutely fantastic, but you know what, you were just pipped to the post by this other person. Next interview, oh, you were fantastic, but you just pipped to the post. This went on for years, I finally got into the BBC and I looked round, where are all these wonderful people who got all these jobs that I didn't get? And I couldn't find any of them. Well, I found a few, like, you know, these guys on here. But, you know, it's really, really, really obvious to me that we live in a world where almost every institution is completely and utterly telling you a line that you have to toe. And this is what working for organisations is like. Now, do you want to do that? Fine, go ahead, do that. If you're one of the lucky ones like this guy who gets in and you can keep your mouth shut and not have any...
He's freelance, he works for himself.
Right, but if you still have to keep a reputation, then fine, do it. Or you can do my model. Find people who love your stuff. You know, I have 100,000 followers on Twitter now. Why? Because I actually engage with people. When I was at the BBC, I was working for Radio 4. I was one of the first people to make a documentary about, to broadcast about Twitter and where it's going to go. So I'm at Radio 4, and they call me in. This is off the record, by the way. I know you're recording it, but anyway. So this is how the hegemonic system works. In other words, the overarching imperialist system works. I'm working for Radio 4 at the lowest level as a reporter, you know, with my ideas, making something. And the top brass figure out that I'm one of the most followed people in Britain on Twitter at the time. So they call me in and ask me to sit down and explain how they've got 100 and odd people working on this. I do it on my own with no money, no resources, and I get more followers than any of the channels except BBC One put together and BBC Click. I had more followers than any of them at the time. And they asked me to tell them in my lunch break how to do it. And these were people earning 300 grand a year sitting around the table. I said, I'll tell you what we'll do. I'm very happy to tell you how it all works. No problem. Open your drawer, get your checkbook out, and let's sign a cheque for £20,000 now. And when I've finished my break and finished reporting, I'll come back and we'll talk about the next step. How's about that? Well, they never bothered getting back in touch with me. So come on, let's get real about this. Do they care about shared value? Do they? No, they don't. So do you want to be part of that system, or do you want to be part of the new way of thinking about the world, which is hard, where you get an audience and you people who really care about what you do? And it's relationships that matter. It's absolutely relationships that are the be-all and end-all of everything that happens to you in your life. If you get that fact straight, everything will be different for you.